All right, so we've got our timing light here, and the timing light has a lead. And what we do with that lead is, this is in the engine, we take the lead and we hook it up to the #1 spark plug wire, and that gives us our timing signal. If I have this set at 0, that means I'm checking the timing on my timing mark. Okay, so on the front of the motor, we have this timing cover, and there's a mark on it. And of course your balancer, and we've highlighted the mark on the balancer here. Your balancer's in here, right? And your mark's coming around, and this has after top dead center 0, and then retarded, or it has advanced and retarded. So as the mark comes around, every time this comes around, because I have a signal here, the light, the strobe light on the timing light is going to flash, and I'm going to see where this mark is. Well, depending on where my timing is at initial, this mark can fluctuate, right, and it can move in here. So if it's advanced too far, the mark's going to be way up here. If it's retarded, the mark's going to be down here. What I want, if I have my timing light set at 0, so right now my timing is set at 0, for the engine idling or initial, I want to see, and there's a bunch of marks on here, and each mark is 1 degree. So let's say my timing is 6 degrees before top dead center. That's what the book calls for. With my timing light set on 0, I want to see this mark 6 degrees before 0, right? So I'm 6 degrees advanced. If it's way up here, that means it's advanced way too far, and I need to adjust the distributor and bring it down here. So here's the thing though, what happens is, if I have my timing light set for 0, or the base setting, and I rev the engine up, what's going to happen is this timing mark is going to go zoop. It's going to go up here, because what's happening is the timing is advancing. So you can literally take your timing light, put the strobe down on there and be watching it, and while you're watching it, if you take and you zing the throttle up, you can literally see this mark take off this way, because the ignition system is advancing the timing. Well, what I can do though is I can check total timing, because what you need is you need a timing light with a degree meter. Now, what happens here is this. If I take my degree meter on my timing light and I say, you know what, I want to know what my total timing is, or I want to know how many degrees my timing is advancing. So when I rev this engine up to 3,000 RPMs, I want to know, am I at 30 degrees, am I at 40 degrees, I'm at 20 degrees, where am I? Because, like I said, we like to see between 30 and 35 degrees. On a small block Chevy like this, if you get up to 40, 45, 50 degrees of total timing, number one, the engine is going to start losing power, and you're going to start doing damage to your engine. This is why it's so important to check this, especially during initial break-in. So what I can do is I just take my timing, and I have up and down arrows here, and I say, I'm going to go up. I want to run this thing at about 30 degrees, no more than 30 degrees, just for break-in or whatever. I'm just going to say initially I'm going to set it for 30 degrees. So there's 29. So now I've got my timing set for 30 degrees, right? Now I take my timing light, my strobe, and I put it on my timing mark down there. And I'm looking at my timing mark here, and if I have it set for 30 degrees, when the engine is idling, what's going to happen is this mark will come way down here. If I'm just looking at it with it idling, this mark is going to go way down there, because I advance the timing light, the strobe on the timing light. But when I rev it up, remember the timing is going to advance. So when I rev it up, what happens is you're going to see this move. It's going to move on up here because the timing is advancing. With if I want 30 degrees of total timing, I rev the engine up to 3,000 RPMs, and I watch this mark, and my mark will move up here, and what I want is I want that mark right on 0. So if that mark is right on 0 with my timing light set at 30 degrees, that means my total timing is, guess what? It's not 0, it's 30 degrees, because I have 30 degrees built into the timing light. And that's basically how this works. I'll try to shoot a video at the end of this. I don't know if I'm going to put it on or not, because one of the problems that I have is the strobe on my timing light. For some reason the camera doesn't like to pick that up. I'd like to show you this thing moving around when I rev the engine up, but you know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that on camera. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's timing. So we're going to set our timing for about 30 to 35 degrees of total advance. Some engines need more. It just depends on the engine. The engine will tell you what it likes. I know, like big block Chevys like lots of timing. I did a big block Chevy with big open chamber 781 heads for a guy recently, and we needed like 42 degrees of timing to make that thing run. But that has a much larger chamber, and it was pretty low compression. So it just depends on the engine. Less efficient chambers, larger chambers generally need more timing because the flame speed is slower. So it just depends on what you're doing. All right, so that's basically it for the timing. So right now we're at initial timing. You can see we're at 800 RPM. And I'll switch over to my strobe light. Right at about 10 degrees. Now I want you to watch this when I advance it. Now we'll take and we'll advance our timing light to 30 degrees. Now you'll be able to see what that did with our timing mark here. Down there. Watch what happens when I advance it. When I set the timing light for 30 degrees, that mark's coming way down here. When I rev it up and the timing advances, we can see our mark moving up, and you can see the mark up there, and it moves up right to about 0. So with this mark, when I have 30 degrees on my timing light, once I rev it up, this mark should come up to 0. Now if I come up to 0 with my mark here, and my timing light set is set for 30, I'm not at 0. That means I'm at 30 degrees because I've built 30 degrees of advance into the timing light. So hopefully this makes sense. I mean, it's really not that hard of a concept. It's just a little bit hard to show it on the engine with the light strobing and all that. So I appreciate you watching. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, My Vintage Iron 7512. Helps if you hook the ignition up. And I think I just ran out of gas. Yay.